A very good afternoon to all of you, and may I thank the organizers for affording me the opportunity to stand here in front of you and be able to contribute. As much as I would have wanted to speak on some other issue, which really were very exciting for the whole day, I will have to stick to Kashmir. That's what I'm here for. And apart from the many good things is that I get to speak while Arnab can't speak for this time. Now Kashmir, unfortunately, whenever we talk about it, it's in the context of strife, separatism, violence, stone pelting. And it's a sad day that it has come to identify itself with such issues. Now my attempt here, given this August gathering, would be to give a very theoretical perspective of what it is there. I'll try to be as unbiased as possible, although it's not really possible. But I'll try my best so that you're able to make out what's happening there. Now, when we talk of Kashmir, in my polemical analysis, I use the word aspirations, grievances, and social sanctity. I believe they're very important when you want to understand Kashmir. And it's not like other states. Aspirations in Kashmir is identified with separatism, cause, sentiment. Dissenters who disagree with the system and want to move on. Grievances is more mainstream. It pertains to governance, good governance, bad governance. And if it's bad governance, there are grievances about a job, sadak, bijli, pani. Social sanctity is what we are fighting. Is the sanctity when people at times resort to violence, and yet they have social sanctity, not in all, but some sections of the society. And it is this social sanctity that we've been fighting for. It has eroded. If we look at 89, it was really high. It's not there today, but it has still persisted and refuses to be obliterated. And unless and until it's there, you will always have situations like we had in the last 3 or 4 months. And in my humble analysis, 3 things we need to examine. First is an average Kashmiri, which could be me, somebody else, his or her psychological mindset. It's the mind which convinces the arm to pick up a stone and throw it, or pick up a gun. What is this psychological mindset? B, any analysis about trouble in Kashmir, not about good things, but about bad things, would be incomplete if we don't take into account the role of the neighboring country. Not for the good, but for the bad, certainly you would have to take them into account. And third is the role of establishment, Delhi. And when we say Delhi, we talk of the central government. Now, when you look at the Kashmiri, an average Kashmiri is like any other Indian, has economic ambitions, wants his or her children to study in the best schools, get the best job, upwardly mobile, very ambitious, and yet seems to be going into a state of strife, knowing fully well that the other options are much less lucrative in terms of economics. Why is he or she doing it? What is this psychological mindset that compels him or her to do it? I look at it since 1947 in the context of partition, the way it has traversed till now, and I believe that the average Kashmiri is in a state of psychological captivity. He is captive to this social sanctity where he feels it's sacred to fight for a certain just cause. The role of the establishment should have been to facilitate him or her to be released from that captivity. And we've not been able to do it. That's the reality. But then, for the average Kashmiri, it is something which he or she has to ponder, that why do they go into a state of strife? There is a certain element of delusion and confusion in us also. We are not able to make up our mind, and probably unable, or it's become so confused out there to make out right from the wrong. This is one aspect. Now we look at Pakistan. Between the land of Kashmir, the people of Kashmir, and the water of Kashmir, they would always choose the water of Kashmir. I don't think they have any specific love or affection for either the land or the people. Their strategic interests are with water. They might not have done a very good job with their country, but they've done an excellent job in being able to incite violence in our place. They have cultivated influence. They incite violence, strife. Nothing, I said it once and there was a lot of on TV, that nothing is spontaneous in Kashmir, and I stick to it, that nothing is spontaneous. There's a lot of external impact. And they have the luxury of being on the other side and even projecting their inglory as glorified in Kashmir. And they, till date, have managed out there to come out as squeaky clean, attributing the worst sort of wrongs onto Delhi, while as walking away as if they're clean, which they are not. But that's how they project it and have succeeded to a great extent. Now when we come to Delhi, the establishment, I fail to understand why it's so, why, you know, in 1947, Kashmir economically was very down. Schools, hospitals, roads, name it. That's the investment that the Indian state has made there in the last 70 years. So much of education, healthcare, universities, medical colleges. But what went wrong? Why is it that there is still a difference, a gulf? Now I believe that what has never been a problem, Delhi has always been magnanimous when it came to Kashmir. How might have been a problem? What you give to Kashmiris may be not as important as how you give it. The mode of delivery, and this is again, you know, I'm not making an objective statement, this is what I believe, what I feel. Maybe the dignity, given the context of psychological captivity, social sanctity of violence, the way, the psychological mode of transmission of those goods perhaps needed some work. Until date, it is the same. Somehow I believe that there has been a certain level of consistency with Kashmir policy because it's remained mostly in the last 70 years in the bureaucratic domain. I had the chance at very close quarters when these last 4 months we had this problem in Kashmir. And I think our politicians can do a good job. We had the Home Minister coming there and he was so restrained. Or we have Mr. Ram Madhav. To be very honest, I see, you know, last 2 years, 3 years evolving as a Kashmir expert, noticing even the minutest subtlety in Kashmir. I really believe that it needs political handling. As long as Kashmir remains a file in a bureaucrat's office with a page being added every day, you always will have a problem. You cannot treat it as a file. It is not a file, it's about people. India is benevolent in Kashmir, but it has to be Mother India rather than benevolent India. And that's what I think they're craving for. Management and engagement. These are things. Do we manage the situation there or do we engage them? Now, one of the questions in the context of last 4 months is that once there is a strife, how do you react to it? Do you use force? Or do you allow them to vent their anger and tire themselves out? State power can be limitless. And the reality is that we have used force in the past. General Malik is here, he would know it. We have used force, but I think we might be reaching, we might have exhausted those options. In any given situation, there is an operational response and a structural response. I think we might have invested too much into the operational response, which is a necessity. You can't totally rule it out. But then we might have invested too little in the structural response. A structural response would be the Mother India response, would be political engagement, but would be other structural measures. We have thousands of students from Kashmir going into the other parts of the country, studying there. They have to be ambassadors of India. They have to come with tales of love. But they don't. And as long as such situations persist, it would create a problem. Take water, for instance. This is one issue where Pakistani interests and Kashmiri's interests contradict. The whole treaty is based on at the cost of J&K state. But even there they act as a martyr and walk away as a friend, given that it's explicit, unambiguous, that they want water at our cost. Somewhere we are not even being able to start that discourse, that this is our water and it's being used as per the treaty by that country. We've not been able to. They happily, gaily, they paint as Delhi walking away with the water rather than them. So these are some of the issues where we could have actually worked and tried to do something. You know, today also, when we look at policy, which has been, there are some, they stare at us. There is a premium on dissent. As Mr. Sopan Das Gupta was talking in that session, there actually is a premium on dissent, which should stop. The law of the land should prevail at any cost. But we need to stop vacillating between two extremes. At times we use brute force. And at times we pamper so much, to such an extent, that the law of the land loses its relevance. We need to find an optimum trade-off in between the two extremes, wherein there is discipline and order in the Kashmiri society, and at the same time, the state is seen as legitimately compassionate towards its citizens. That will have to be done. And that would mean engagement. Responses from our side would have to be strategic rather than tactical. The theory of short-term gain and long-term pain somewhere would have to end. I feel even today that people of the state dream of a government which is able to protect them, give them that security. But once we fail to do so, then I don't know what happens there. Their psychological captivity, that comes to the fore, and they tend to follow. I dream of a day when hopefully we don't have to resort to operational measures for Kashmir being here. The ultimate dream is that Kashmir is an integral part of India and that we are able to convince them in peaceful and dignified coexistence without the remotest hint of any operational institution or installations out there to control them. That would not only be a victory for Kashmiris, but the concept of India and Indianness. And for this, it would need sagacity, it would need statesmanship, the will to engage, and the will and the courage to take risks. And nothing could be a better time than this. We have, as our Prime Minister, one of the most popular leaders in the recent history. I always say, and I'll repeat it, that if the people of J&K, specifically the people of Kashmir, can't strike a bargain with such a popular leader, they can never ever dream of doing so in a situation where there will be a leader not as popular as we have today. But as I said, that this would need a long-term thinking, a very long-term thinking. And in a democracy, it's very difficult. I'm looking at the time, we're running out of time. I have to tell you that in a democracy, we can't expect the rest of the country to behave in a manner which is fruitful for us. But some of the discourses on media do really create problems for us. They might be good, and you have to understand that like a sick child, when once Raj Kapoor Sahab was asked, which film do you like most? He said, they are like my children. How are you asking me to make a distinction between my children? But Mera Naam Joker flopped. And it's like that child who had something lacking. I think you need to treat Kashmir as the child which is not doing well and keep it close to your heart. Thank you.